and that led directly to the war and the British declaration of war. And Hitler had not wanted war with Poland, and he certainly never wanted war with Great Britain.
Right. Now, here's where we got to stop and do the disclaimer, and I guess I really should have said that at the beginning of the show, because already I've mentioned the premise of your book, the Polish war guarantee, and the war should have been against the Russians, not the West. And already I've had actual grown adults say, oh, well, Hitler was a real bad guy, this, that. So I guess we need to go ahead and make it clear that both of us, particularly you, since you're the one making the case here, you do understand that Hitler was an evil guy. You're just saying that he wanted to project all his evil to the east, and it was British blundering that basically put him in the position, forcing his war against the democracies of the West.
This is the point. I mean, there's no doubt Hitler's crimes are scarlet. They're horrid, and no one defends what he did or what the Nazis did or what many of them were hanged for and shot for. And they deserved what they got, and he deserved his death in the bunker. The point I'm making is simply this, that in his foreign policy, as he wrote and said, and as his behavior indicated, the last nation he wanted war with on earth was Great Britain. He admired the British Empire. He wanted it preserved. He thought the Kaiser had made a terrible mistake in building up a high seas fleet to challenge the British Empire. He wrote off Alsace-Lorraine for the simple reason, first, he didn't care about Alsace-Lorraine that much. Secondly, he knew to get it back from France would mean war with Britain, and he was willing to make concessions to avoid war in the West. That's why he didn't demand Schleswig back. He didn't demand Eupen and Malmedy back from Belgium. He ceded the South Tyrol to Mussolini. Why? Because he wanted Mussolini as an ally. What he wanted even in Poland, he didn't want war with Poland. He said 5 days before the war guarantee, I don't want this settled by force. The reason is Hitler was building an anti-Comintern, basically, alliance with Germany at its head. It already included Franco, and Spain was clearly his friend. Mussolini was already a partner. The Japanese would become so, and he wanted the Poles included in this anti-Comintern alliance, and he believed the Poles would be receptive, first because they were deeply anti-communist. They had fought the Soviets at the Battle of the Vistula in 1920, the Miracle of the Vistula, and driven Trotsky's army back, and he thought there was no real dispute between the two countries that could not be resolved. He was willing to let the Poles keep the corridor to the sea, which had been taken from Germany, as long as he could have a rail and road corridor across to East Prussia, which had been cut off from Germany. Again, no one says that Hitler was a wonderful fellow. He was a liar, he was a deceiver, he was a thug, he had been a bully, he had murdered his own comrades, he would murder millions of people. But what I'm talking about is his foreign policy was not designed to threaten any interest of the British Empire. Indeed, he was willing to go out of his way to appease the British. I mean, he had no claims on Western Europe. And why the British would step in and declare war on Germany, that always astounded him. And he ever tried to end that war and failed to do so, and that's why he was brought down. The British held on until Stalin gained his strength and was aided by Britain and the United States, and the United States came fully into the war, and that brought down Hitler, and it brought down the British Empire with it.
Well, so why did the British give the war guarantee to Poland? You quote people in the book, the English so-called statesmen, telling each other, oh boy, this is a big mistake. Why have we turned over our decision about war with Germany to these insane colonels over in Poland?
It's exactly right. Lloyd George said the decision was demented, that the General Staff, if they approved it, should be put into an insane asylum. You had all these British statesmen, including, incidentally, Churchill, in 1948, but he almost alone of British statesmen in 1939 hailed the war guarantee to Poland. Now he said, we're all united. But British statesmen left, and historians, and British historians as well as Americans, and all of them say here was an act of insanity, giving a Polish regime of colonels who had participated in the rape of Czechoslovakia the power to draw the British Empire into a war to the death with Nazi Germany over a matter, Danzig, which was of no interest to Great Britain. I mean, the British didn't give a hoot whether there was a German flag or a Polish flag over Danzig. They thought Germany should never have lost Danzig. And so the stupidity of the decision, I think, is a given. I don't find anyone defending it. Question is, why did the British do it? They did it because when Czechoslovakia came apart and Hitler walked into Prague when it was signed over to him by the president of the Czech Republic, the British felt humiliated and disgraced, and Chamberlain himself was under threat from the backbenchers to be thrown out. And so Halifax pushed him. And so Hitler then demanded the return of Memel, and the Lithuanians gave it back in an instant. And all these rumors spread in London that Hitler was going to attack Poland and he was going to attack Romania. He didn't even have a border with Romania. All these things were racing through British diplomatic circles in the 2 weeks between March 15th and March 31, and Chamberlain suddenly gets up and announces he has given an unsolicited war guarantee to the Polish regime. And even Germans were saying, this is the same stupid mistake we made before World War I, giving a war guarantee to Austria, a blank check. And so that's the origins of it. I think Churchill and Chamberlain both came to recognize the stupidity of the decision, but once made, they could not draw back. And Hitler kept trying to negotiate with the Poles because he didn't want war with the Poles. He didn't want war, certainly, with Great Britain. The whole idea of the Hitler-Stalin pact was obviously aimed militarily against Poland, but politically and diplomatically it was aimed at Britain. When Hitler got the agreement to the pact, he thought the Brits would say, okay, we can no longer maintain a commitment to Poland, and they would back off. But the British renewed their alliance, so Hitler called off his invasion for 1 week to try to figure out how he could get back what he wanted in Poland without going to war with the British. He failed. He went to war. The British declared war. They refused twice, on 2 occasions, offers of Hitler to end the war because Churchill wanted to hold on till the United States came in. And he did, until he was the indispensable man in bringing down Nazi Germany. But he was also the indispensable man in ensuring that the war went on for 5 more years.
Okay, so Chamberlain was embarrassed, humiliated over Munich. He had agreed you can take the Sudetenland but leave the rest of so-called Czechoslovakia alone. And then when Czechoslovakia fell apart, Hitler went ahead and took the rest of it.
Well, here's what Hitler did to me. This is very important. Hitler did not take the rest of Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia began to fall apart in March 10th or March 11th of about 1939, 6 months after Munich. What happens was the Slovakians and the Ruthenians to the east, a small enclave to the east of Slovakia and Slovakia, they declared independence. The Hungarians began to move on both provinces because they had been under the Kingdom of Hungary when it was part of the Habsburg Empire. Hitler told the Hungarians, stay out of Slovakia. He guaranteed the independence of Slovakia. And then the Ruthenians asked him for the same thing, and he said no. And the Hungarians moved into Ruthenia and took that over. Then the Czech president came to Berlin to see Hitler. He wanted the same deal, basically, as Hitler had given the Slovakians, which is an independent country whose independence Germany would guarantee. That's exactly what Hitler should have done. Instead, he bullied President Hacha and the foreign minister, Chelvalsky, into ceding basically the Czech, what was left of the rump of Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic, as a protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia, a protectorate of the Germans. So they lost their independence, and Hitler got into Prague the next morning before President Hacha had even made it back. It was peaceful, but it was also brutal diplomacy. And that is what did it. That final Hitler in Prague did it with the British because it had so humiliated Chamberlain, who bet everything and who had told the world, I'm the one person who can deal with Hitler. He doesn't want anything more in Europe. I'm the statesman that cut the Munich deal. The Munich deal guaranteed peace for our time. He was made into a fool, and he was an object of ridicule by the backbenchers and the laborites and all the others. And it was in that mood of hysteria and anger and rage, humiliation and panic that he handed the war guarantee to Poland.